I really felt like I wanted to just adventure into some different genres, and
Yeah.
I, I think I was much more comfortable with myself in an adult role than I was when I first.
What's going on, everybody? It's Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance. And we are here with the blonde bombshell herself, Victoria Vale. Victoria, how are you doing today?
I do fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, with that name, I have to ask you, why Victoria Vale? I mean, I know where it comes from, but why Victoria Vale as your stage name?
I worked in a comic book store when I was in high school, and I absolutely loved the original Batman movie. And Kim Basinger's character was my favorite, probably one of my very favorite characters of all time. And I just really wanted to emulate, I think, her vibe, which I think is a very smart, sexy heroine. I really like that.
Awesome. I was thinking about that, and I never thought about. I said, wait a minute, the first three Batman movies, all of the main female characters were blonde bombshells, from Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman to Nicole Kidman's Chase Meridian in Batman Forever. I'm like, I never thought about that till just now.
It's so true. I feel like they're all very like smart, witty characters too.
Yeah, that's true. I never really looked at it that way. I guess especially we're of a certain age, so we were much younger when those movies came out. So
Yeah,
as an adult,
looking back,
I
yeah.
always find it fascinating when you look back at these sort of movies where you see the nuances of these characters that you never picked up as a child or a younger human being. It's always wonderful in my opinion. One movie that I always tell people that I absolutely love as an adult is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, because I saw it as a kid. As a kid, you just see it for the gore. I watched it again in college, and the psychology of Leatherface, how the chainsaw is an extension of his phallus, how all of that plays. I was like, I'm sitting there. I must have been like my first year in grad school. I'm like, I am, mind you, my background is not in psychology, but I've taken psychology. I was blown away about how intelligent and how well that was articulated. And I'm like, this is amazing. Why do people not like this movie?
You don't realize the depth of the character, I think, until you go back and evaluate it.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, how long have you been doing adult content?
I would say about say 7 to 10 years. I worked with a magazine called Score,
Yes.
and still continue to work with them. And I did a lot of solo, like big boob content
Mhm.
for about 7 years, and then the last 2 or 3, I've like sort of ventured out in some more like hardcore roles with other companies.
Okay.
But I'm
Well,
definitely like late to the game. I feel like I also, yeah, did the whole college, grad school, corporate job sort of thing. And then I'd always been on my bucket list, I think, to shoot and do adult content stuff.
hmm.
And when I had the opportunity, I was excited about it, but I never thought that it would transpire into what I've done over the last 10 years. So.
Interesting. Now, what prompted you to transition into more hardcore from just doing pinups and pictorials with score?
Yeah, I really felt like I wanted to just adventure into some different genres, and
Yeah.
I, I think I was much more comfortable with myself in an adult role than I was when I
Okay.
first started. I think there's a certain comfortability you have to have with yourself and other performers too, and I think that sort of evolved over time. I wasn't immediately comfortable with it, I think.
Understood. I totally understand about that one, and I would hope that in this sort of industry that you definitely get into it when you're comfortable with your body and who you are.
Oh, I
I can only imagine the sort of mental toll that that could possibly take if you are not.
I think that's very true, and I think that that's one big blessing about getting into it at an older age. I feel like I was very comfortable with myself. I think I had done a lot of things with my life where it doesn't define, being an adult star is something that I love and I cherish, but it's not something that completely defines me. I have like so many other things that I've done in my life, um, very different experiences. So I think that I was just very comfortable with myself and comfortable where I was in life. to be able to take on like adult content. Whereas I think that at the ages of like say 18 and my 20s, I think that would have been something that would have been overwhelming.
Right, especially nowadays.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine what that. And again, people choose to do what they want to do, but
absolutely. And some girls are immediately very comfortable. I have
right,
friends in the industry who just seem destined to get into the adult industry and were made to do
right.
it from the start.
Yeah, I'm just glad there's no record of me at 18 and the crazy. Well, I wasn't that crazy of a kid, but still, no one had cameras in college. And
Yeah,
put them on
right.
the
We all
internet,
did
and
stupid stuff.
like the worst thing I had was like 10 or 15 years ago was me asleep on the plane coming back from a competition on Facebook, and that doesn't exist anymore. So I couldn't even imagine that sort of record of my life, good or bad, going forward now. So yeah, it's definitely a lot
Yeah.
to deal with. Now, hear that you're into music trivia, especially classic rock. What do you define as classic rock?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I don't think just classic rock. I think it's probably one of my favorite genres. But I would say like from Motown to 60s, 70s rock, all the way to 80s, 90s. 90s sort of my era, like growing up. And I suppose in some new music too I enjoy, but my sweet spot I think is probably like late 60s, 70s classic rock. And
Right.
Motown, I would say, which my parents really listened to a lot growing up, so I enjoy it.
Same here. I got exposed to Motown, all the doo-wop stuff, Sam Cooke. I heard a lot of that growing up, especially all through high school. So I have a very wide breadth of musical experience as well. So I totally understand it. So what are some of your favorite bands?
Oh, geez. I really like sort of a jazzy feel. I like Steely Dan a lot. Gosh, I mean, I feel like I could name any Motown group from the Commodore. Well, I'd say Supremes, Commodores. Uh, I would say I love even as late as like Prince. I would say are some of my
Mhm.
favorites. I like George Michael a lot. May he rest in peace. And gosh, from '70s era, probably just anything you can probably name. I love and have listened to.
And so yeah, so much good music back then. I can
Yeah,
understand it's hard to really pick a favorites because
it's so hard to
yeah, because
pinpoint.
you can
And
say George
my
Michael.
mood changes. Sometimes I'm in the mood to listen to something, and sometimes it's a different era that I want to listen to. I even like R&B, like '90s R&B stuff. I
Right.
like a lot.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have a one sort of master playlist that I use when I'm walking and whatnot. If I'm like going into the office or something, and in any given moment, I could go from Sam Cooke to Rage Against the Machine to Frank Sinatra, um,
Absolutely.
to George Michael, to what like Macklemore, Nas. It just
Absolutely. So it's just like my playlist. It's so eclectic.
yeah, it's
I'm the
just
same exact way.
song music's just there's so many different genres and so many things to like. You just I I can't just say, oh, I only like this genre, that genre. Like they're just sometimes songs just get you regardless of what genre they're in.
It's very true. It's so true.
So you've done the hardcore. Well, if you move on to the hardcore, have you seen maybe a difference in opportunities since you've moved over to doing more hardcore adult content?
Well, yeah, definitely, because my solo content was mainly just sort of boob centric, right?
Hmm.
It just revolved around just solo masturbation, like breast play kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But with obviously the hardcore, uh, it's more MILF related. A lot of recently some stepmom kind of stuff, which is
Right.
sort of a new thing that the adult industry seems a bit focused on. And I recently did my first like threesome with another girl and a guy. So all different things.
Now let me with that, and one of the things that in my experience for talking to other adult stars before, a lot of well, I should say they're intimate encounters, a lot of that lifestyle they lived sort of translated into what they did in front of the camera. Is that true with you as well?
Well, yeah, well, not with like, yeah, obviously like stepmom stuff or anything like
Well,
that,
yeah,
but
not that.
no, but I do feel like I bring a little bit of myself to every role. I'm a big like shoe collector, and I put a lot of thought and energy into the wardrobe that I bring to set to wear, and footwear, my hair, my makeup. So in that way, I definitely bring myself into really every role. Well, I don't know if you call it a role, but adult role
It's a
that I.
role. It's definitely acting there. Now with that, with you doing your direct to consumer, your OnlyFans content, has that been more of a like the same sort of timeline as far as you getting more into mainstream studio work, or did that come after the studio work started?
Well, when I was doing my solo work, I was still working, a full
Right.
time job. So
Right.
I didn't immediately like jump into like OnlyFans and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I,
No problem.
I did Exotica, and I got a bad cold, and it's still like hanging on. So
Ooh.
I apologize for my cough. Oh, there. Yes, but I do feel like my OnlyFans has really only evolved in the last, I would say, maybe 3 years or so.
Hmm.
And I've really enjoyed it. I actually think I enjoy it more than even my professional content, because I control it so much more. And I like the interaction, the one-on-one interaction with fans. I really actually enjoy talking to people and getting to know people, connecting, on different levels. I find that very fulfilling.
I that's I think one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed about the conversation, especially when it comes to OnlyFans, um, talk about connection. And I think that's very important, but also, in my opinion, I think it humanizes people in the industry, because you are not just seen as, in your case, blonde hair and big boobs. You're seen as, even though that's part of the attraction, you're seen
Sure.
as a person, a woman, an individual, someone who can communicate, who has passions. And I feel as though that's something that is really helping to grow the industry as a whole, but also grow individual creators' fan bases. Like you essentially you have a brand, whereas 10 years ago you really wouldn't be a brand; you would just be a performer. So
Exactly. And I think that we talk a lot about, I mean, at least I feel like maybe our generation talks about, social media, it's all negative um, repercussions from that kind of thing. But I do think that there are some positives. I think that with OnlyFans and other sites, I feel like performers now have like control over their own content. And you're right,
right,
they do bring more of themselves to the fan base, and I think that's wonderful. I
right.
like that, the control and really like the professionalism as far as like of having a business. So each person really creates their own brand and their own business.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something I've seen as well in conversations. There is much more of a business, like understanding that this is a business. I am a business. I am a brand. Compared to, again, I was a lot younger and obviously not having interviews, but even as a 20 something or a 30 something guy looking at the industry and hearing the stories and reading the articles, that's not how you as an outside person looking in, you never would get that, oh, this person sees themselves as that, outside of like a few outliers, that like a Tara Patrick or somebody like that, who really kind of saw the future
White
before
door, by the way.
everybody else did.
I love Tara Patrick. It's so funny. I had such a fan moment. I was at Exotica, and I can remember the day that I saw Tara Patrick on the cover of Penthouse, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think that's like one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And then learning about her, just her background. I think she was like in nursing school at the time or something. And you're right. I think that was really the first performer that I really felt like, had that kind of brand and that kind of background story that she brought to the role and her persona.
Right.
What a stunning woman.
Yeah. And she's one of the few who had the knowledge to do it herself, from the servers and the website setup and everything. And that was unheard of in the 90s.
Yeah.
So, you know, she was definitely a pioneer as far as that was concerned. You talk about Exotica. I hear that this Chicago one that just passed was your first one. You talked a little about the in the comic convention scene. We always call it the con crud, that like nagging cough or sickness you get after convention. Luckily, I've never gotten it, but it's definitely something that they talk about. But outside of that, how was your first Exotica?
It was good. It was crazy. I had been to AVN in January, and that was sort of my first foray into. Like I said, I had worked in a comic book store, and so I had gone to some Comic Cons. I would say Exotica would be more akin to like a Comic Con.
Yes.
And AVN was a little bit more half industry, half fan.
Okay.
But yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I've never been there as an exhibitor, but I've covered what. I went to DC last year and the year before. I went to Jersey last year as well. And
I heard Jersey's even crazier.
Yeah, Jersey, yeah, especially compared to DC, that's definitely a different level, just because of the venue differences. But it's a lot. There's literally, when my man and I went to Jersey, like, there were people we were looking for. Like, there are people like I wanted to interview, wanted to possibly talk to, and literally I didn't bump into them until like the last day when we were leaving. I was like, I didn't even see them there. It was just, there's so much going on, so many people around. It is so easy to miss people, even though we're walking up and down the aisles for hours, talking to people, getting interviews. You know, it's a interesting and fun, entire experience. I don't know how you guys do it, and we were, as I say, two old men, 2 men in our 40s getting content, and we drove up and recorded all day and got something to eat, and we were both back in the hotel room just editing video. Yeah. And then going to sleep like 2 old men.
Yeah, totally exhausted. That was exactly how I felt. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can stand anymore.
I don't see anybody goes to the after party afterwards. I'm like, y'all going to the after party? What? Not. No. We could have gone.
I'm not an after party kind of time of life. So.
No, that's too much. That's
too much for me, for sure.
And we got to get up and early in the morning. Well, yeah. We got up early. Apparently, we didn't realize that day 2 didn't start until like 1 o'clock. With like 1 o'clock. That was so weird, but I digress. Yeah, so Exotic is fun. I'm looking. One day, I'm gonna hit up hopefully Chicago and or Miami. In addition to Jersey, just to kind of get a difference. I know there are different performers that attend each, and it's good meeting and getting content with all of the different performers. I've really enjoyed interviewing adult content creators because of the different perspectives, more so importantly, and viewpoints and backgrounds. And one of the things I hope that a lot of people get from these interviews is that, as I say, we're a certain age. You know, you hear about somebody that's in the adult industry, like especially female in like the 80s, 90s. It's the stereotypical, they ran away from home, they had a broken home, and their father didn't love them, and you know, so they got into, you know, probably stripping and hooking and you know, the whole stereotypes. These interviews, none of them have been like that, and I've absolutely loved it. I think that now, especially with this one thing about the internet, has definitely changed the adult industry, but I think that we are really seeing those changes now. One with OnlyFans and Fansly, all of the direct-to-consumer sites, but also the fact that we've had the internet en masse, maybe 20 plus years, like everybody's really had access to it. So many more people are accustomed to adult content now.
Yeah.
More so than what they were, say, when I was growing up, you was growing up, you know, you found the magazines on your uncle's mattress, or, you know, they had the VHS tapes that, you know, your dad or somebody took the labels off so nobody would find them, sort of thing. It was hidden. Now so much more is out in the open. So you have more and more individuals who are saying, this is something I wouldn't mind doing. and also the ease of it as well. There is really no barrier to entry outside of you signing up for a website, providing your ID, and depending on what you do, getting tested.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. And I feel like now it's so varied, the types of people who are getting into it, especially with, like you said, with, I think it started with probably camming and then
Yes.
OnlyFans and Fansly, Loyal Fan, all the fans sites. But you see, nurses and lawyers and all different types of, well, I'm using women, and of course there's men too, but
Right.
all sorts of occupations making a switch over to adult content, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's part of just like that overall acceptance. Just I think people in general are getting more accepting of different ways of life and um, I don't know, different lifestyles, I guess.
Right. That's a good way of pointing it. I've always had, I don't know, I had a really good friend in college, and we'd always get into these conversations about human beings, animals, sex, and sexuality. And I think that in many respects, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us anymore. He passed away a couple of years ago, but the conversation we had then, I would really be interested in the conversations now. And in many respects, how I won't say freedom of sex and sexuality, but there's more of an open conversation, in my opinion. I think, as far as the society is concerned, of sex and sexuality. Because I just remember a conversation, and let me back up. It's not even so much just that; it's that there is a tolerance,
Yeah,
an acceptance, but also a willingness to, in a lot of respects, again, some people are so close-minded, but there's a willingness to understand and have a dialogue in a greater sphere than what we used to. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, a female friend, and she'd talked about, I think she asked me a question about, she was talking to some of her female friends, and they were talking about dating a man who was bisexual or something like that, and just the conversation that happened. I don't think conversations like that happen without where we are now,
absolutely.
and where we are as far as the acceptance of individuals for who they are, what they want to do, and also understanding that if that's not something you want to partake in, you don't need to partake in it.
Absolutely.
And if you don't want to see it, don't buy
Yeah, don't want
it.
no big deal.
Right. Exactly. So I have found these conversations really enlightening over the past. I think I started a year ago now. It's really weird. Time flies when it comes to that. Now you are with Webster Style, so I have to ask you, what are some of your favorite fragrances?
Ah, so I came prepared. I don't know. I did my due diligence
I
and
see.
saw that you. I love your talk about layering a little bit. I also love Nautica Voyage. I don't know if it's because we're in the same sort of era, perhaps, but how you like to layer that in the summer scent. I also love to layer scents. I am. In addition to my shoe collection, I have quite a collection of fragrances. My mother always said that you're never fully dressed unless you have your signature scent on. I think that I've taken that to mean like your signature scent can be whatever is your signature at the moment.
Right, right.
I have like more of a summer scent, which is more like my Dolce & Gabbana light blue, which is empty. I think it's more for this summer. I really like Flower Bomb. It's another one of my favorites. I think for my favorite right now at the moment is probably Giorgio Armani C.
Okay.
As you can see, I'm almost out of this bottle. But I've been experimenting with like some heavier scents, and I saw on a couple of your videos, you had some Tom Ford scents. I really love Tom Ford, but sometimes I feel like I need to layer it
Mm,
to sort of cut. Like it has such depth. A
yes.
lot of them. Um, so this is Black Orchid. I
Yes. I
have
love
this
that.
little bottle. I love it. I feel like also Tom Ford has a lot of great unisex scents. I feel
Yes.
like Black Orchid could be used for men or women.
Yes, I totally agree.
And I like bitter peach a lot, but sometimes I'll layer both of them just to cut the sweetness of the bitter peach
Hmm.
and the heaviness of the black orchid. I love Bulgari, Goldie. I also like Goldie Absolute Night, which often I layer with black opium.
Hmm.
Dolce and Gabbana again. The Only One is another one of my very favorites. Versace Crystalline. I could go on and on.
Well,
It's
you're
gonna
in the
be an
right
hour
place.
long conversation. So what
Look,
about you? What is your favorite fragrance at the moment?
oh man, that's tough. I always go back to Zaharoff Signature Pour Home. If I have to choose between two, and that's what I'm wearing, it's gonna be three. It's always gonna be Zaharoff Signature Pour Home. I love the Fougere, but more the lavender. I absolutely love the lavender, that fragrance, and then the frankincense and myrrh and the woodiness. Absolutely love it. It's clean and professional but formal at the same time. It's such a, I would say it's a gentlemanly fragrance, and that just fits who I am. I go to um English Laundry's Oxford Blue, which is very similar to Versace Eros, but I feel like it's a bit classier with some of the notes. There's a note or two added extra, and I forget.
Or depth?
That's the one that got me into fragrances. So it's more sentimental. And then the third one's going to be Ovation for Men. That is such a grown man fragrance, in my opinion. It's one of those fragrances that just gets a reaction that even the most ardent fragrance person in my life, that like the first time I wore it, they're like, "What are you wearing?" If they have a reaction, it's something special.
Yeah.
It's even the story behind it, and the creator that interviewed Sean, one of the guys behind it as well. And it's just, I love that fragrance. It's so sophisticated. It's so, um, it's utilitarian. Like I wouldn't wear it to the gym, but anywhere
Right.
else I would wear it. But they have a sport version, and if I went to the gym, I'd wear it there.
Well, like you were saying that you sometimes you would layer it with Nautica Voyage, and I would think that
Yes.
would bring it down a bit.
Yeah, that's what I did because I wanted to see the Nautica Sport. The more I smelled it, I was like, what is that? It reminded me of something. It reminded me of something. And then I'm like, wait a minute, it smells like if I mixed Ovation with, excuse me, the Ovation Sport. It smelled like if I mixed Ovation, the regular version, with Nautica Voyage. So
Yeah.
that's what I did. And while it wasn't a one-to-one, it was still a very similar vibe. But instead of one fragrance, you kind of had two fragrances competing. So sometimes I get more of a hint of the Nautica. Other times I get more of the creaminess from the Ovation. Other times it's like a perfect blending of the two. So it was a really cool experience trying that out.
More complexity for sure.
Yes, definitely,
Okay.
definitely complexity. So you talk about shoes. What are some of your favorite shoes that you have?
Well, I love Louboutins. I mean, I have an embarrassingly large collection of shoes, but probably Louboutins are my favorite. I love a high shoe, but I also love like pleaser heels, which are more of like a stripper heel, but they have incredible designs, and I really, there are a lot of times where I really am in a more fetishy type mood or
Mhm.
sexual type mood, and the pleasers really fit that role for me.
Understood. Definitely, definitely understood. Well, Victoria, I'm not going to hold you any longer because I'm sure we can talk longer, but no, you got things to do. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh gosh, well, Twitter I am Victoria Vale 00, Instagram Victoria Vale XO, on OnlyFans Victoria Vale. That's about it.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, you guys saw all that
Gosh.
down below there by the time this video comes up. I want to thank you again, Victoria. It has been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Webster Style, the man, the voice of fragrance. You know where to find me, webstyle.com. You know what? Peace.
Bye bye.